Happy Saturday. So, once you talk about this approach to health, there's a series of typical questions that people ask. So, let's recap. Life-giving breath, life-giving water, 70% water content foods, which is fruits, vegetables in their natural state as much as possible, and sprouts. Seeds are and nuts are very healthy, but they do not have a ton of water in them. Life-giving breath, breathe 3 times a day, 5 to 10 times in the ratio that we talked about, 1-4-2. Drink half your body weight, ounces of water. Things to avoid: alcohol, caffeine, meat, dairy, the toxins and the poisons, everything processed, everything that's in a carton. If it's in a carton, if it's in a box, if it's in a can, it virtually is hard to be okay for you if it's in any of those containers. So here's some of the stuff that usually comes up. Calcium, one of the things that people ask about. Well, what about calcium? I need dairy for calcium. No, you don't. You can get just as much calcium from broccoli, and you can get just as much calcium from orange juice. The thing that happened with a lot of vegans is they didn't eat fruits and vegetables. They ate pastas and they ate rice. That's what I did. And so they all ended up unhealthy because they ate so much gluten that they got leaky gut. Remember, that's another thing that we should absolutely avoid. That is one thing that you should completely eliminate from your diet is gluten. It's such a terrible thing. And anything that has the processed corn syrup, that is also just an awful product for you in terms of your overall health. My coffee is made. And by the way, when you go off gluten, it's going to be terrible. Now, when I first did it, it was very, very difficult to find products that you could eat that didn't have gluten in them. That's really changed. And maybe tomorrow we'll do a walk around and talk about food and talk about stuff. But one of the things that people ask about is calcium. Well, you can get a lot more calcium from vegetables than you think. And if you get your gut healed, which there's specific ways to do that, then it's going to work a lot better in terms of being able to digest food and be able to absorb the calcium that you need. Protein. I need milk for protein. I need meat for protein. Okay, no you don't. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger has come out now and talked about, how he ate big steaks on the show Pumping Iron, the documentary. And he even now says, that was just marketing. He says you don't need all of that protein. And let's think about it for a minute. What animals are the strongest in the wild? What's the biggest and strongest animal that walks around on the planet? Elephant. What does an elephant eat? Does an elephant eat any meat at all? No. Elephant is a complete vegetarian. All right, well, let's talk about animals that are super close to us. Chimpanzees, gorillas. The lowland silverback gorilla is 99.99% DNA identical to us. That's how closely related we are to that animal. If you haven't seen a lowland silverback gorilla, they can weigh 550 pounds, and they can take a tree this big around, rip it out of the ground, and break it in half, which they will do when they're showing off when 2 males are fighting. They will go around and break things in order to show how powerful they are. What does that animal eat? Bamboo leaves, bamboo bark, and fruit. That's what they eat, and they get that powerful. Herbivores are the strongest animals on the land. They also live much longer than carnivores. And then let's take a look at carnivores. There's a hierarchy. Well, what animal lives the longest and is the strongest and looks the best? Lions. They're the top of the food chain. They kill the animal, and think about this, the creatures that actually kill the animal and eat it first, they look better, they live longer. Lions kill the animal, and when they eat the animal, what do they eat? They eat the internal organs, they eat muscle and connective tissue. They don't eat any of the other stuff. They don't eat, they peel away the skin if you watch. They don't eat a lot of the fat. And they don't eat the intestines. They don't eat any of that stuff. Which, by the way, there's a lot of research now showing on the submolecular level that if we do eat meat, if we eat all the meat combined, organs, connective tissue, and muscle together, that actually that creates a lot of positive biological things. So if you are going to eat meat in any way, whether it's a bird or it's an animal, that, you know, eating the whole animal and eating those best parts cooked together. And then, you know, look at the hierarchy. What comes after the lions? Hyenas. Well, what do hyenas eat? They eat the next stuff, right? So they'll eat intestines, they'll eat stomach, they'll eat, the less desirable organs. And hyenas do not live as long. They certainly don't look as good. What comes after that? Well, the scavengers come after that. Why do you think vultures look the way that they do? They eat something that's dead. Everything that looks like that eats stuff that's rotting, right? The animals that are healthy eat the animal right away because they're the ones that kill it. The animals that don't kill it, they don't look as good. So does this mean that you should never eat meat ever again? No, I'm not saying that. I do eat meat. I didn't eat meat for a long period of time, and I do now. But it's a small portion of my diet. It's in that 30%. And I don't food combine. I don't eat a protein and a starch. I eat protein and vegetables, or I eat starch and vegetables. The starches that I eat, I don't eat a lot of potatoes, even though I'm Irish. I eat, some very rarely, occasionally. The starches are more the vegetables that are the tubers, right? The rutabaga and stuff like that, the root vegetables, because those have a lot more starch in them, obviously, than the green leafy vegetables. When you do eat the green leafy vegetables, the greener the vegetable, the better it is. And obviously the fresher and the more organic, that's what you're looking for. The other thing to think about with regards to protein, when in our life do you think you need the most protein? When you're an infant. Infants are growing huge amounts. Well, broccoli has more protein than mother's milk. So if you eat these super healthy foods, if you eat what they now call superfoods, broccoli, spinach, avocados, these types of foods, you get all of the nutrition that you need. And your body doesn't have to use nearly as much energy to try to digest that food. And it gets all of the nutrients, which is going to give you a ton more energy. You're digesting large amounts of food takes a large amount of energy. Like I said, that's why people are stress eaters, because they shove food in and blood goes into their stomach, and then it relaxes them because now their body has to take away from other energies. If you get all the nutrients that you need and you get it without having to spend a ton of effort digesting, now all of a sudden your body's got a ton of energy to do other stuff. A good portion of my meals I drink because, number one, it's quicker. But number two, my body doesn't have to use a lot of energy to get all the nutrients. It just gets whatever it needs. So if you are over 40 and you've taken a lot of antibiotics and you've taken a lot of painkillers, which is pretty typical in our country, take a look. I would strongly suggest that you talk to a naturopath or a homeopathic physician. There's lots of them now. Talk to them about leaky gut, see how your stomach's doing. I can't tell you how much I suggest that you get gluten out of your diet forever. And start thinking about, putting in these vegetables and these fruits that are going to take your life not only to another level in terms of health, but another level in terms of energy, and you're going to live longer. People that eat that stuff live longer. The China study, if you want to look up one of the greatest studies that's ever done on this, it's called the China study. China has everybody in China, they eat everything. Depending upon the various regions, They literally eat every animal that exists on the planet, which is disgusting, but they do. And different areas have completely different approaches to food. So China did this massive study on health, on who lives the longest. And they found that the people that are primarily vegetarians, that whose diets consisted of vegetables and rice, that also had a strong sense of family, a strong sense of community, all of that mattered, were the ones that lived the longest. But the ones with a high degree of vegetables and rice as their diet, as opposed to the areas of China where they primarily eat meat, had a tremendously lower rate, hugely lower rate of heart disease and cancer. And those are still the top 2 causes of death in this country, heart disease and cancer. And the majority of cancers are not genetic. It's a very small percentage that are genetic. The more that they study the DNAs, Dr. Ornish, who wrote a book, Undo It, another great book that you should get if you want to read about all of this stuff. Read Dr. Ornish, Ornish, book called Undo It. I just saw him speak again a couple of weekends ago, and he talks about how the more they study this, the more they figure out you have a propensity towards things based upon DNA, but a very small percentage of cancers are actually genetic. The majority of them are environmental, and the majority of that is based upon what you eat and what you're around. Diet has a huge impact on that. That's why the area that I live in is called Cancer Alley. The area that I live in also needs a much higher concentration of gastroentero doctors than, say, California. California needs 1 gastroentero doctor for every 100,000 people. The area where I live in needs 1 gastroentero doctor for every 25,000 people. And if you go north of Milwaukee, they need 1 gastroentero for every 20,000 people. Well, why do you think more people around here have troubles with their colon and with their lower intestine than they do in California? Well, because California's diet is predominantly much healthier than the diet around here. The diet around here is meat. People drink a lot of beer and they eat a lot of cheese. Well, guess what? Then they have lower intestinal issues. So we don't need the protein that we think we need. And if you eat healthy foods, if you eat spinach, if you eat broccoli, you're going to get all the protein that you need. But more importantly, you're going to get incredible nutrients that your body doesn't have to work so hard in order to get, and it doesn't have to work so hard to get rid of all of the other stuff. The change in health will be dramatic. Hope everybody has a good Saturday. Stay warm. It is an Arctic chill out there for us. Tomorrow we'll do a walk around my kitchen, and I'll show you just kind of what I do. Although, things change over time. What I do now is different from what I did 8 years ago, but that might be not a bad idea. And then we'll move on from this topic and go on to our other stuff. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for watching. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other.